Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, a 7th-year doctoral student in clinical psych, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
Yes, and I'm LouiLou, and my pronouns are he and him, and I am in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol. I'm a former Miss Castro Country Club, and I am always in search of balance. And each week, we will provide and create a brave space where we can engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
Our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
Yes, but before we do that, please like, share, comment, ding that bell.
Ding, ding, ding. And now the disclaimer. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The material and information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we are just friends behind a mic here to entertain you. Hey.
How's it going?
How's it going? How are you? And we have someone back today, Louis.
I know. It's like we didn't get enough of him, apparently.
Who are you?
Hi, my name is Manny. I'm a certified financial planner and financial life coach.
Say it again for the people in the back.
I'm also a recovering alcoholic.
Nice to have you back on. So for folks
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Yeah. So for folks who may not be familiar with Manny or why Manny's back on, this is part 2 of our finances and recovery. If you're interested in catching the last episode, we have a shortened version of it that was put on YouTube on May 28th, 2023. So that's May 28th, 2023, finances and recovery. But before we jump in, how are the two of you doing?
I'm good. I'm great. It's like we just had Pride Weekend here in the San Francisco, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I've been doing Pride so long here in the city, I really know how to do it. I basically didn't do much of anything. I just did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I stayed out of people's way. That way, folks get to have their fun and whatever without my judgment. Because I don't have a poker face.
Yeah, you're pretty judgmental.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Manny,
I'm like trying to not say bad things about.
You can say whatever you want to say.
Honey, no, trust me. No,
I'm just kidding. I only have good things to say. And this is really weird. I have to keep doing
Yeah,
this.
you don't have to do that.
No,
all right, I'll just keep looking straight ahead.
Yeah, you just look straight ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, maybe we should think about that the next time. Maybe not put the guest in the middle because you would have to pivot.
No, I like it when they look silly. No, I love it.
But Manny, how was your weekend? How have you been since last we saw you?
My weekend was really great. It was exhausting. And you know what I thought about this. I'm like, I'm so tired. I'm sober, but I'm so tired. And then I thought about when I used to do Pride when I was still out.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was probably 1,000 times more tired, but I still had the energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Had that FOMO thing going. It's like, I know I need to go home, but I'm not going.
Yeah. I don't have that anymore. But what kept me out was that my boyfriend had a bunch of friends visiting from out of town, and I was being, a very good boyfriend and making sure that I put in the time to make sure I get to know his friends too.
Yeah, I wonder if he's watching this.
Probably. Hi, Josh.
You better be.
I know, right?
That's really sweet. Yeah, this Pride was very different for me too. I for whatever reason, I was avoiding it. And so I chilled with my boo for most of it. We had breakfast and lunch, and we watched a movie, and then he went and he did his own thing, and I went and I did my own thing, and then reconvened and went to a sober thing, and then after that, we had a really good time.
Yeah, it sounds very sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really sweet. It was a really nice. It was really nice. It was a nice Pride for me. And then just in general, I've just been so exhausted. I've just been really tired. I have, the proposal that I've been talking about for such a long time is due at the end of this week. And so I've been rushing, to get that kind of stuff done.
When you said you were tired, it reminded me about hydrating.
Okay.
Are you hydrating?
Yeah. You didn't see that big thing of water that I was drinking?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm here to help.
You are indeed here to help. So, we're going to jump in. And so for a quick recap, so for folks listening, the last time Manny was on, we were talking about finances and recovery. And the reason why we asked him to come back was because the conversation was very rich. And one of the things that I took away from that conversation that felt very valuable was the importance of values. And so one of the questions that Manny posed, like the hypothetical that you pose is, am I spending money in a way that matches my values? Right. And that was, that came from the conversation about where does a person start, you know? And so I just wanted to start there. Louis was not on that time, so
I was making my way back from Palm Springs.
Yeah, could not be bothered. So
Welcome back.
welcome back. So I want to start there. So could you give us a little bit of a recap about what you meant when you said, "Am I spending money in a way that matches my values?"
Yeah, absolutely. I typically find that when I see clients in distress around their finances, they've been in a pattern of spending that has been potentially like just automatic, and they haven't thought about it, which relates a lot to like alcoholism, right? Like you just find yourself in a behavior. And so the reason why I ask folks to be really clear on what their values are is so that we can make sure that the money is in alignment, like you're spending money on things that you actually want. And when you're more cognizant of like what your values are and what you're truly after, there's a lot less money left over for just, I don't know.
It's kind of cool. It sounds like the same concept of a sexual idea.
Oh, say more about that. Yeah.
Well, no. If you don't know in the steps, one of the pieces in the 4-step we do, it's like a larger inventory, and we do a sexual inventory because I think a lot of times it's like if we have problems with our sex ideal or whatever, we take a look at it. I like to say I'm a detective. We take a look at what's going on, and then in the sexual ideal, we think about what it is that we want from this, and we try to live up to it. And so I think in your that's really a good way to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'll have a client pull up their credit card statement and I will ask, oh, I see this big ticket item, or I see this trip. Like, was the trip your idea? What was your intention to go on that trip? Or I saw that you bought this thing. What was your intention behind that? And usually it's people like, oh, that's just a subscription. I thought it was a good idea. I totally forgot about it. And I'm like, see, there's like moments where people can come to realize that they're spending money automatically and without really being conscious of it.
So I love what you're saying, and I want to actually take this conversation about relating it to like a sexual ideal a step further. So what it makes me think of is like the nature of sexuality. And in a lot of ways, there are things that feel taboo. There are things we don't talk about. There are things we're afraid to admit we like or don't like. There are ways that like we can have sex dissociatively, right? I think the connection
I like all of those things.
Right. So, Louis, I'm glad you're back. So basically, I bring that up because I think there's an interesting connection here. And I think that the connection I'm making here is that in both situations, money can feel as charged as sexuality. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because one of the things that you mentioned during the last show was that you said, money is a form of energy exchange. It's how we exchange energy with each other, right? And so, I wanted to highlight that connection because it does feel, and it's also something that we share with people, right? Like money is something that we can kind of throw at relationships or we can use very intentionally. Like this is money we're going to use to build together, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Money can be a symbol. Mm-hmm. It can be used to exchange energy, just like I said in the last on the last show. But it can be truly a charged topic, and it depends on the culture that you come from, the family that you're raised in, your background. All of that plays into it.
A lot. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It's okay. I need the help.
People, I feel like I'm very militant about the mics because when I'm listening, I hate when people fade away. So I just push the mic toward your mouth.
But the point that I wanted to get to is that you said it's taboo, and just like how people do not want to talk about sex publicly, typically. It's the same with money.
Absolutely.
Like you're not supposed to talk about it. And
I
think that's where people get into trouble.
What's your question?
And I'm pretty sure that you may have talked about it last time. How do you deal with the fact that like the shame? Because shame shows up. Like either I'm not making enough money or I haven't been spending it the right way and I don't feel comfortable. Like some of the struggles I've had and I've been getting to a better place talking about it is how I've been spending my money and the fact that I'm having to clean up messes as a result of how I've been. How do you, when you're working with somebody on that, how do you get past that? Or I mean, how do you start the conversation?
My trick for working through shame is compassion. So first, be compassionate with yourself that you were in a different place mentally, and your behaviors and your choices were driven potentially through your addiction, right? So that was an old version of you. There's a new version of you now.
I like it.
And that person has to be compassionate to the old person who made those decisions. Because if you get stuck in this cycle of shaming yourself, it becomes a shame cycle and you don't get better. You keep prodding at the wound and not allowing it to heal.
Okay.
I like, sorry, go ahead. Were you going to say something else?
So just compassion. Be compassionate with yourself. Yes, work has to be done and behaviors need to change, but first you have to be compassionate with yourself.
Oh, I trust you. I also love you. So
I love you too. I love that I'm here again.
Yeah, I love. So what I'm appreciating about what you're saying, and where I want to take the conversation is in the next part of what I'm thinking of is like, how do we identify our values, right? And one of the things that I'm appreciating about what you're saying is that you're talking like the energy I'm hearing behind the money conversation is that that money can be used as a tool, that it can actually be. I don't know if controlled is the word. Yeah, I think controlled is the word that I'm thinking of here.
So think of money as another form of expression, right? Think about when people say like, I want to give money to that organization. Why? Because a part of their values line up with that organization's mission, right?
Right. And so and then we can talk about values. So part of at least what I'm taking away from this is that, when you have clarity about your intentions, or when you have clarity about, say, maybe like your identity or your values, how you use your money, actually, it's a lot less mysterious, right? Because you know where the energy is coming from, and you know the direction that you're wanting to take it in. So can we talk a little bit about how does a person identify what their values are?
Sure. One of the exercises that I do in my life coaching practice is I ask clients to describe to me like a peak experience. Describe to me a day where it was just like the most amazing day. And the things you use to describe that day are actually tips. They tell me what you find valuable, right? Was it because you were with someone you love? Was it because it was in a specific area? There are things that I pull out from that peak experience.
This one was saying with your booth thing, the way you had described your day.
Okay.
That
I was like, what are you doing right now?
No, that's a really good.
Yeah. I just got really protective. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. But no, it was like the way you described it. I feel like that was that.
No, 100%. Thank you for.
Wow. Okay, so if you're not, this is what I get to deal with.
No, because it's so funny because there's some things I feel very protective of, and I feel very protective of him, and so anyway. So
and I would say, okay, looking at what you described earlier in the introduction, it's like, okay, so you value like a deep connection,
right?
You value downtime, right? So I could go on and on, but that's how I pull out what your values are.
Yeah.
So how does that relate to like money?
Yeah.
How do you want to use money to better connect with your boo?
Yeah.
Maybe you'll say, I'm going to set money aside for a vacation for both of us because I know we can better connect on that. That's what I mean.
I love your use of that. And to circle back to what Louis was saying, I do think there is actually Louis is nodding his head for people who can't see. Going back to like what Louis was saying, I think you're 100% right? Like for me, when I think back at that day, and to Manny's point, I think about like, oh, there was downtime. There was freedom to kind of coexist. There was freedom to do like what was important to both of us, and like as individuals, and like together. And there is a way that money, like if you look back at that day or any day, you can track where money was spent and how money was spent.
Yeah, and it's not even how the money was spent, but like think about this: like the way you earn money allowed you time to have time off.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So
right.
It feeds into every part of your life. You're making decisions with money all the time.
Yeah.
Consciously or not.
Yeah. I'm sweating so bad now.
There's a takeaway. There's a takeaway underneath this that like is super important, especially for those of us who believe we're so self-sufficient.
Yeah.
asking for help.
Oh, 100%.
And especially because I would have never thought to, the way that you're approaching this, I would have never thought that. And if I'm trying to come on that on my own, like I used to say, especially with my recovery, my sick mind can't heal my sick mind. I need to go outside of my sick mind to kind of at least address that I have a sick mind.
Right. Yeah.
100,000%. Actually, after this show, someone contacted me, double-digit years of sobriety, and they said to me, I've never shared this with anyone, but I watched the show, and you broke down that barrier for me that allowed me to call you. And I thought that was
That's
so
wonderful.
rewarding.
Yeah.
It's like a truth serum.
Well,
You're
it's
amazing.
But he said, I have double-digit sobriety, and this is the shit that makes me want to drink.
Yeah.
And it was rooted in shame.
Finance and romance.
Right? And so my approach is really gentle, direct, but compassionate at the same time, so that we can heal, right? And make better decisions.
I love
Look at
that.
you.
Yeah. Well, I and to your credit, I feel compelled to say this on air. After the last show, I had a lot of different people who asked me hey, how do I get a hold of Manny? I'd really this, I like his approach. So to your credit, I feel like you've tapped something that's
Also, I think
really
it makes a
working for
difference
people.
that you're it's easy to look at you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You can look at me some more on
right.
YouTube at Manny Money Happy Coach.
love that.
Manny Money Happy Coach on YouTube.
Do it.
Shameless.
Yeah, no, we'll hopefully we'll be plugging your contact a few more times, but let's not get too derailed. Thank you, Louis. So we're gonna go.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm gonna derail more. Okay.
That's okay. You can keep throwing compliments my way.
Okay. So going back to this idea of values. So you say that you start off by asking people what their most amazing day is, and then from that you get information. So once you've identified a person's values, I think the second part of what you said is okay, how does that relate to money? Can you say more about that?
Yeah, sure. So going back to that example about you spending time with your boo thing and maybe getting,
Here we go.
maybe spending that money on a vacation, if that's meaningful to you.
Yeah.
Downtime, where can you find downtime?
Sure.
I'm not asking you right now.
Yeah. No, I know you're not.
Yeah,
I know you're not. Well, the other thing I'm hearing about too is one of the conversations that I've been having a lot recently, because I have to start making decisions about my professional life, is how much downtime do I want? Right. And so I've thought about what kind of jobs am I looking at? Right. There are jobs obviously that I can make a lot of money in, but I'm I'm not going to have all the downtime that I want.
100%. So there's a trade-off, right? You can make this kind of income, but what kind of hours are you going to be working?
Right.
And that's part of your value system.
100%,
because if you value the downtime, you're willing to make that trade-off, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're connecting those things to money. And so one of the things that I think is kind of hard to figure out for any person is thinking about where do we start, right? And on one end, I think for some folks, it's well, I don't have that much money. So can I even, does this even apply to me? And one of the things you said in our last episode was absolutely. There is a way, even if you aren't making a lot of money, that you can make your money work for you. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So the best investment you can ever make is in your education, right? And there are ample resources online where you can educate yourself. You just have to have the willingness to look for it. And the beauty of YouTube is that you can find someone with a personality who looks nice, that is delivering the message that you need to hear. So what's that saying? When you're ready to learn, the teacher shows up. And
there's no shame in however you approach it, just so long as you take the steps. Because I think I always thought there's the regret or the guilt that I would have is not doing it.
Yeah. And it's the willingness to put in the time and the effort.
The other thing that I remember you saying was that one place that a person can consider starting is how looking at your finances. You don't have to make a lot of money, right? But at the end of the month, are you breaking even or are you spending more than you're making?
Yeah. And the best way to find out if you're doing that is to put together what I call a spending plan, which sounds nicer than putting together a budget.
Oh, nice.
A spending plan allows you to just match up. Am I really realistic about how much I'm spending eating out? That's what people don't realize, that dining out is maybe a huge part of their spending,
especially in recovery, because it's a lot of us, we do fellowship and It's like,
Yeah.
I recently had to take a look at that, and I was like, okay. And then on top of that,
So what that does tell me, okay, so that tells me that you value connection through your fellowship. Okay, so you can do it without shame and guilt, so long as you're conscious about like, okay, X amount of my income goes to this, and I feel good about doing that, but I'm willing to make, like changes in other areas of my life so that I'm
going
not.
to show up at the restaurant with my little sandwich and my hot sauce.
Well, I love this point because one of the things I love doing, I don't spend money on a lot of things. I love spending money on eating. Like I love going out to eat. I love ordering in. And so I budget, or I plan to spend X amount of money. And so whenever I like Uber Eats or I don't ever feel guilty about it because I was like, no, I made room for this. And there's a lot of freedom in that. Like it changes how I'm interacting. You know what I mean? Like it changes how I have the conversation.
You can enjoy it and not feel guilty about doing it because you're empowered. You've made that conscious decision to spend the money in that way. It's when people find themselves paying for things that they didn't really sign up for. Saying yes to people that are asking for money when maybe they personally can't afford to, but feel compelled to because they have to.
Right.
That's not
like destination weddings. I hate destination weddings. I think they're so rude. Are you going to have a destination wedding?
No, it's like if I'm already there, I'll come. But it's like that's it. So back to the whole value thing. One of the things that I did, like I have friends who like had good jobs and always when they go out they spend a lot of money and they always want to split. And that's fine when I have it. I made a conscious decision because of where I was at and how I felt to love those people, but to stop going out with them, because I realized that, I don't need to feel bad about the fact that I'm not able to do this. And also I don't need to, I don't want to make somebody else feel bad for the fact that they can do it.
Okay. So a few things are coming up for me when you say that. There's this mentality that we have to like keep up with everybody around us when the reality of the situation is not everybody starts with the same starting point, right? Mm-hmm. Like that person might not have student loan debt.
Yeah.
That person might have gotten a really good job through nepotism. All of these different factors you don't know the background.
Yeah, exactly.
And so to judge someone on like what they have, judging your insides with everybody's outsides is a fool's errand, right? Because it's not an accurate way of measuring your whatever. And then also like there's things about like self-worth that can come up and like, oh, I'm not good enough. I don't work hard enough. And it's like, but were you given the opportunity to, and did you have the same, privileges? So and that's where compassion comes in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, what this is bringing up for me is a conversation that Louis and I were having a little earlier today, which is that in the end, when it comes to like interpersonal relationships or things we see or hear, literally nothing has anything to do with us. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Like how somebody else is spending, how somebody else behaves or uses, it has nothing to do with us. And we get to make choices sometimes. And sometimes the choices that we make, sadly, are to tell ourselves stories about the things that we see, right? When we start to compare ourselves to other people, that is a story we are choosing to tell ourselves, right? And I think that like what it's also bringing up for me is like how there's a bit of like someone's mental state or mental health involved in how money is spent, right? One of the things that I wanted to kind of circle back to is going back to this idea of like, how do we start? And one of the things that I hear coming up with what Louis is saying and just kind of in the subtext of what we're talking about is money in relationships, right? So money between friendships or romantic lovers or like someone you're living with or roommates. Do you have any ideas about what that can look like or ways that people can think about it?
Yes. And I've worked with couples with very different money styles. So that's the first part, right? Be conscious that everybody's coming to the table with a different set of circumstances, right?
Yeah,
just
we
like
all,
I talked
we all
about,
have a different
right?
sleep number.
Right? Exactly, right?
A what number?
Sleep number.
What is that?
God, are they like a sponsor?
The mattress sleep number. Come on. Oh, I forgot. You don't even watch TV.
No, I don't. Go on.
I lost my train of thought
I'm
thinking
sorry.
about this freaking
No,
mattress.
you were talking about everyone. I was going to say everyone has their different sleep number. That wasn't what you said.
Everybody
everyone has their
comes,
different spend style.
It's so working.
everybody comes to the table with a different money story that they're telling themselves. And most of it is developed in childhood with the people around us. So like what you think about $1 was probably shaped by how your grandma talked about $1.
Okay.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So all of those things you bring to the table. And now you're in relationship with a friend, a partner, a romantic partner, and you have two very different money styles. And the best way you can have a conversation about it is to go like this. Give me your hands. Anthony.
Yes.
Baby.
What?
I love you so much.
Uh-huh.
I know in the past talking about money with you has been kind of like a charged thing.
I hate this so much.
I just want to let you know that I love you so much.
Uh-huh.
And like, but I want to talk about blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
But no matter what, I still love you.
Okay.
Right? And so you've like,
You know what?
reduced the...
This is a sidebar, but I really feel like you were very intuitive because you, like, of the two of us, that is definitely more challenging for Anthony.
I'm like, what are you doing?
No,
Stop.
I think
Let
so.
my...
And
leave
it's
me.
like
Did you see
higher
him
power is
squirm?
like
Did you see him squirm?
I know higher power
My
is in
shoulders-
you.
His palms are so
Yeah.
moist.
I hated every minute of that. Although I will say that, like in my relationship, that is generally how conversations are had, right? Like, there's a foundation laid out that, like, there's care here, like there's connection here, and that's like the premise of a conversation,
Sure.
which changes everything.
Yeah, and you have to come to the relationship with this mutual respect for each other, transparency and honesty.
Right.
And that begins with honesty with yourself.
Right.
About like, are you spending more than you can actually afford? And that's like a moment where you need to be honest with yourself.
Right.
Right. And then you can bring that same kind of honesty and transparency into your relationship. It's when people are stretched too thin, are making decisions because they feel that they have to make other people happy and living inauthentically, that people start butting heads when it comes to money and finance.
Yeah. I think what you're saying was like so right on, because I was thinking about like when we were in Hawaii, and I know that this has everything to do with the work that I've been doing, the step work. I had a number of conversations with you guys about some of the challenges I've been having around finances, and into what you were saying, like this having conversations with people. I've been able to tell people, like, most of my friends are like really generous, and they're all, oh, no, I'll pay. And I've had to make a conscious decision to say, and it had to do with self-worth. I know you can do this, but I've decided that I don't need this. Right now, I need to make this sacrifice because I've always had situations where someone has been able to pick up the slack. And if I let that keep happening, then there's never going to be an opportunity for me to kind of really kind of step back and kind of grow up. You know,
I hear that.
Grow up. I don't need everything just because it's there. I don't need it. Like, I mean, I can survive. I can sustain. There was a time when, as long as I had a bus pass and something to eat and bill and certain bills were paid, I'm good. All that excess was excess. It was, yeah.
I would, I want to add to that. And at the same time, like, I think we have to allow friends to be friends. Like, sometimes we have to allow people. I know that was on the other end of that. Like, we have to allow people to show up for us. And sometimes, like, one of the rules that I have, for example, with lending money is I never lend money. I only give money. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if someone is asking me for X amount of money because they want to, like, hey, can you lend me? I'm like, no, I can't lend you X amount, but I can give you X amount. Yeah. Right. And what I think that does is, one, it allows for me to be in relationship. And if I have it, then I can give it. Mm-hmm. Number one. And number two, it takes the tension right out of that, because the last thing that I want in my relationships is for money to be a source of tension or conflict. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a great strategy.
And it's good to know.
Yeah, thanks.
That's a pretty...
And it's good to know.
You adding up what you need, right?
That's so funny. Okay, so let's go back to money and relationships, right? So what you're suggesting is that you establish some connection, you establish some safety first.
Yeah, and then be conscious of like, oh, my partner grew up in near poverty. Of course, they're going to be thinking that we're always living in scarcity, despite our money situation today being very different.
Right.
Right. So being cognizant of like, oh, I think I get why you think we can't afford this, but let me But I think here's why, you can work around that.
You know what? The other thing I wanted to talk about is, so one of the conversations that we've had recently is like, how do we bring God into our relationship? Right. And I'm bringing that up because I feel like one of the principles I live by as a sober person is God is everything or nothing. So God is either in my relationship or is not in my relationship. God is in my finances. God is in all of my dealings. Right. And so I feel like there is a way to use money in a way that feels like it's centered in some sense of a higher power. Do you have an opinion about that or thoughts about?
That's a great question, Louis.
Well, you know what we're doing right now, because I believe the way that I speak to my higher power speaks to me, is I ask and I talk to people. And the meditation for me is to shut up and listen. And so I think that when I'm passionate about doing something, when I'm wanting to do something or wanting to spend money or wanting to save for something, I talk to someone about it, because that point when I'm not willing to talk about it, that's when I fall out of line with my higher power. Like when I'm not interested in what you have to say, like I've made my decision and I'm holding on to it. Usually a lot of times it's like I'm sharing and talking about it. I'm going to still do what I'm doing, but at least I'm open to hearing, maybe, that's probably not the best way to spend your money, or maybe you should try this, and I may not in that moment like respond the way I need to, but the way I've always kind of been, I'll brood on it and maybe go and take a deep breath, count to 10 and think, oh wait, they were right.
I think like as a practical piece of advice, if you're in recovery and you're also struggling with money, bring that to a meeting and listen to what is being said. And if it's about alcohol, just replace that with money.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, right?
Yeah.
Like the message will be sent to you.
Right. I thank you for saying sent to you and wiggling your fingers, because I think one of the
wiggling your fingers
like this.
Well, yeah, like that.
I feel like we're gonna do a psychic reading.
Yeah.
Coming out.
She got sued. So what I'm thinking of is, for folks who may struggle with like the word God or a sense of a higher power, I think one of the things that comes up for me is that you don't have to believe in, say, some guy in the sky, right? But for example, if one of the analogies that I use is like, if you can believe that you can love someone, then you can believe that a God exists, right? Because we don't know whether or not love exists. You can tell me how it feels for you. I can tell you that I have a feeling and it makes me feel compelled to say this thing. And all the ways that we can defend love, we can defend an idea of a God. And so with what I'm trying to get at here is like, I think one of the first things that happens for me whenever I center any decision on God is that things start to slow down, right? And to your point, to your wiggling your fingers, like, and the answer does come. But I think like answers can only come when we're like capable of listening to them.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. There's
I
like
feel
a
like they're
willingness.
I always say my higher power is around every corner, and sometimes I just walk right past. But the gift of my higher power is that my higher power is always persistent and wanting me to connect in the way that I need to connect. And so maybe not this corner, but the next corner. I just had to throw that in.
Yeah. That reminds me of this like thing that I always think of, like the universe, my higher power, God, whatever it is for you, is presenting this challenge to you, to me, so I can learn from it. And that challenge is going to keep coming up every time until I have learned from it.
Absolutely, it's kind of like with me derailing. Like I think this is a gift to Anthony.
What is
to learn how to deal with life on life's terms.
Well, you know what this reminds me of is drinking dreams or using dreams, right?
I'm a using dream.
No. Well, if you would let me talk.
I'm a fever dream.
Well, I think about, for example, like I've had experiences that feel like using dreams. And what I mean by that is that if I've had a using dream, right? Typically it'll happen because maybe at some point throughout the week I had like a little thought that was like, oh, maybe I should, and then I'll have this dream and it'll be like the fucking apocalypse, and then I'll wake up and I'll feel so much gratitude that it didn't happen. And that to me feels like a gift, right? Like I got to learn a lesson in my sleep that I didn't have to learn by actually going out and using. right? And so I think similarly, like in prayer or in situations that you talk about that arise, like that is a gift, right? Like sometimes, I was saying this to a friend earlier, we may think that an experience that we're having is novel, right? I may think like, oh, you said something, it hurt my feelings. That's somehow novel. But the truth is, I think that was always sleeping underneath the surface and that it was just waiting for something to kind of poke at it before it kind of surface, and then you can learn, right? Because as you were saying, a lesson will continue to repeat itself until we've learned from it. I don't know if you actually said that or if those are the pieces I put together, but I see you're thinking.
No, we said it.
Oh, yeah,
I thought it was great.
You're like, no, you're like, no, I did say that, and it was great.
Well, the words that were coming up for me were unresolved childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Which is like, we can just always bring it back to unresolved childhood trauma.
100%. 100%.
And then after we deal with that, it goes to sex.
No, I mean, it's all the same.
Yes,
it's all the same. I mean, that's so, but yeah, childhood trauma.
Yeah. And a lot of like bad money behaviors come from potential people that you were surrounded by. You just, maybe, here's the compassion piece. Maybe you were never taught how to manage money in an appropriate way, right? Yeah, exactly. So,
or to you, right.
But now you are an adult.
Yeah.
And now it is incumbent upon you to find the resources that you need to learn what you need to learn so you can do what you need to do.
So you got to do the work.
You got to do it.
You do. You have to do the work. So with the last 8 minutes that we have of airtime, let's talk a little bit about what does it look like to start doing the work. And so we've kind of gestured toward this, and we've talked about values, and we've talked about shame. And say, Manny, if someone is listening today and they wanted to start something like in the next 5 minutes, what would you have them do?
Let's get it started.
All right. I want you to download your credit card or bank statement, and I want you with a highlighter to highlight all of your discretionary spending. So not things you had to pay for to survive.
Okay.
Right? So your Netflix, your Hulu, your, I don't know.
Whatever
it is, not like your phone bill, not your rent, like all of those other things that you're spending money on, and just add it up. Just add it up, because you need to start with like a basis foundation of like where we stand today. Don't judge yourself, just collect the information, right? Then if you're savvy enough, use like a spreadsheet or even just a piece of paper. Just write down like, okay, these are the things that I do need to spend, right? And then you've divided discretionary from non-discretionary. And then from there, we can start mapping out like, okay, how much is a reasonable amount for me to spend on dining out?
Right.
Right? So you can have some realistic parameters, because a lot of us, I think, who fall into a bad money habit are living or operating with these, it's like a fantasy, right? Like your income in your mind says this, but the reality of your situation says something else. Yeah. So it's like early sobriety, right? Like that truth serum, like it hurts a little bit maybe, right? Because it's something you haven't been looking at. But when you look at it with non-judgment and with compassion, and you say like, I'm willing to make changes, but I just got to find out where I'm at.
Right.
Like those two things should keep you pretty busy the first week.
I love that. Yeah. And, one of the things I'd love for you to talk about in like the last couple of minutes is, what are some of the benefits of working with someone when you get down to like the meat and potatoes? Like what are some of the benefits of like having, say, a financial coach or et cetera? Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a financial coach. It just has to be someone that you trust and that you can be accountable to, right? There's one of our steps that where we share, like here's you just share.
Are we talking about the 4th and 5th?
Yeah. So share it with someone you trust, but like start removing the shroud that you've put around your money and be honest and vulnerable if you can. I know it's hard, but once you start doing that, you start removing the power it has on you, like the shame and the guilt you were talking about.
Yeah. It's so interesting. One of the things that we've talked about before is that for, most of our conversations tend to come back to God. And most of our conversations come back to just telling the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's what the call here is. Like one of the best ways of starting, at least in what I'm hearing, is just tell the fucking truth about how you're spending your money, what your motivations are.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need help to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. It's being honest with yourself is really like the ticket here.
Yeah.
Right. Be honest about how you are actually spending your money. And I think everything gets a little bit easier at that point.
Yeah.
Because then you're willing to try new behaviors. But if you're unwilling to like recognize that a behavior you've been participating in is bad for you,
Right.
which would be a lie to yourself, then you're never going to get better.
Yeah. And I this is this is a plug for sponsorship or working with like a mentor, is that I think the first person we generally lie to is ourselves, right? Like that's one of the first ways that anyone kind of arrives at a lie is by convincing themselves first, you know? And so, yeah, that's just a plug for accountability. And I think at least as a person in recovery, accountability is very important for me, you know, like that's why I have a sponsor that, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like, it's really easy for me to be like, I'm lying to myself. But, like, be compassionate at the same time. Like, you can hold two things and be like, I've lied to myself this whole time, but I'm compassionate with myself because now I'm putting in the time and effort to heal this part of my dysfunction. Or whatever it is.
I think what's just happened is, like, you get a sense of, like, how I sometimes talk to myself.
I was like, damn, Anthony.
I know.
Relax. We'll get through it.
Anthony, breathe. I know. It's so funny. Like I was just talking to the person I've been seeing, and I was like, man, like I can't wait until like I'm done with graduate school and I can just like exist and like have interest. And it's like I can do that now. You know what I mean?
You're
like
doing
I
it
can.
right now.
I know. But like the takeaway is.
I hope you're interested in this.
No. I absolutely love this. What I'm saying is that like I can feel so rigid, and that's like something that. I like it's
I hear you.
Yeah, I can be really rigid around a bunch of other things, and that's that same thinking has showed up around my spending sometimes, which is like sometimes I can be so rigid that I will spend by like closing my eyes. You know what I mean? Like I'm just gonna whatever it is, I don't want to know what it is. That's more than you need to know about me. And so before we start wrapping up, Manny, how can people get a hold of you?
You can find me on YouTube, Manny Money Happy Coach. I think that'll be the easiest way to get started. You can subscribe to my channel, and then in there you'll find ways to contact me. But Manny Money Happy Coach on YouTube.
Right. So that's www.youtube.com/@money Manny Money Happy Coach.
Manny Money Happy Coach. Man. Okay, nobody?
No, we were good. I mean, you were the Beyonce.
So the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Financial. Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us, at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Yes, and tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yes. And thank you for those you all watching.
Yeah. Oh, and you are you looking at me to do the 15-minute thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So if you aren't aware, once we stop rolling and recording, filming, we continue to record for podcast exclusive content. So we'll continue talking with Manny 15 minutes after are their cameras off, and you can find that content wherever you listen to podcasts. And I think that's it.
Shout out to Bernadette.
Oh, shout out to Bernadette, who's visiting right now.
Yes, exactly.
Another big thank you to Manny for coming
Manny,
on.
You're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Another wonderful conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I learned a lot.
Me too. I wrote it down. I was like, oh, okay.
Should we hold hands?
I don't think we have to do that. That's my least favorite part. You're not coming back on.
Tell me what comes up for you when you do it.
Tell the trauma. Okay, I think it's a wrap. Go. And thank you, Manny.
Thank you, Anthony.
That was wonderful.
Amazing.
That was really, really good. A couple connections I wasn't expecting. Sex. I wasn't expecting a connection to sex.
Really? Because I can always take us there. I'm taking us there now.
Whether we want to or not.
My hand's under the table.
Fuck consent.
You know what? Get out of my head. Get out of my head.
Yeah, I just but it was like an apt connection to make, and also including God, compassion. I've never really heard of anyone talk about money compassionately.
Yeah.
Sure, it's really easy to get down on ourselves that we've made bad decisions in the past, and you just have to be, compassionate. Think about the person you were when you made that decision. And if you continue to make bad decisions, quote unquote bad decisions, then you got to be honest with yourself, right? It goes back to this cycle.
Yeah. Often I find that decisions, I'm of two minds here. One mind is there is really no such thing as a bad decision, because I think we're all going to get to where we're going. Either we're going to get there kicking and screaming, or we're going to get there the easier, softer way.
It's so it's fascinating too. Okay, so when you talk about pulling out your credit card bill, underlining whatever, and you not judging it, but really kind of using it as information. That's the same thing that I know, and I've been sharing with sponsors regarding the work that I do. Why is it that I shut down and I'm not able to kind of treat that the same way with my finances?
Oh yeah. There's so much that you can take from the process of getting sober into this realm. It's amazing.
What were you going to say?
Nothing. Oh. I was taking a moment to marinate.
I know. I was watching him have his moment.
His moment.
Trust me. I will shut down like a computer sometimes. I'm all,
processing.
This is a lot.
Well, the other thing I was thinking about is this idea of a bad decision, or doing things badly. I want to kind of change that a little bit, because I don't think often what we're calling bad is really just a misalignment. And we don't really realize.
There's no good, there's no bad, there's just God.
Oh.
I heard that in the, what the bleep is out there.
Okay, so I want to run with that, because basically what I'm trying to say is that when we're calling a decision bad, why are we calling it bad? Typically because there's some outcome that's unfavorable, right? And that unfavorable outcome generally hurts. It causes some type of pain, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think into this idea that there is no good or bad, there's only God, is that often decisions will get us there, right? Mm-hmm. Which is going back to this idea of either kicking and screaming or getting there the easier, softer way. And sometimes I think that the thing that is painful that we think that we don't want is actually the thing that we absolutely need. It's for a lot of us, it's for those of us who go into recovery, it's usually when we had that one experience where it just hurt too bad, right? And I think that applies to so many things, including our finances. Mm-hmm. But I think, to your point, Manny, I think that part of what makes the conversations difficult to have about money, either with ourselves or other people, is that it's shrouded in mystery. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you mentioned during the last episode was that we're not taught. You know what I mean? At least most people are not taught how to handle finances, or to discuss finances, or to grow their wealth, or et cetera, et cetera.
Totally. And you compound that with this needing to be polite and not talk about money because it makes people uncomfortable. It's now we're feeding the cycle of making people uncomfortable by not by not bringing up money things. And people are suffering in silence. That person that called me that said, I've not talked about this. I've been X amount years sober, and this is what makes me want to drink.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's so interesting about that example to me is that I think at least I'll speak for myself, when I got sober, there were all of these things that came to the surface, right? Usually, and for me, a lot of it, it's childhood trauma, it's all of these interpersonal, deep hidden demons or whatever. And that's one of the gifts of recovery, is that once you stop numbing yourself, you actually start to feel life,
Mm-hmm. I was talking about with my sponsor today, and this is tied to this idea of trauma. I just want to say, giving a shout out and gratitude for the language that we have now, so we can have conversation. Because in the past, you'd say trauma and someone would think that it'd have to be blunt. But trauma
or physical,
physical, and trauma can be as subtle as somebody in school telling you that shirt that you wore that day did not look good, and you holding on to that because you didn't know how to let go of it.
Or the daily, you don't know if there's going to be food on the table.
No, that's exactly.
It can be
Security,
a subtle,
exactly.
soft, not soft, but it can be persistent. It doesn't have to be a one-time thing, like it's pervasive.
Absolutely.
It is pervasive.
And that's why the compassion piece is so important, right? Because not everybody is starting at the starting line, like at the same starting line. Does that make sense?
No, exactly. Well, I always go to this. It's like I need to first have compassion for myself. My mom used to say charity starts at home and spreads abroad. And I took that literally, meaning charity starts in our house. No, but this is my house. And so, like when I was saying, it's like I need to love my friends, but, there are some who are not going to, like you said, appreciate maybe where I am with my finances. So I've got to do that. It's kind of like going to I've got to be the arbiter of my finances.
Totally. Yeah. And that comes up for a lot of people too, is like people find themselves in situations where they feel compelled to keep up with their friends when their finances don't match up. And the thing that's potentially missing from that equation is they've not learned how to create a boundary and still maintain a friendship. And if the friendship doesn't, people don't like it when boundaries go up, right? You know this.
Oh, no, not at all.
Right?
Yeah,
Right?
of course.
Yeah.
Okay, let's clarify that. You said that as though you...
Because you're in the realm of
mental health.
Mental
Sure,
health,
yeah.
Not because you're
you
a perpetrator.
Anthony don't like boundaries.
Manny, the way you said it sounded like you established a boundary with me and I didn't like it.
Oh, yeah. No.
I love that. It's like, it's nice when I have
Manny's
help.
goal is to
Nice
make me...
I just want to make you as uncomfortable as possible today.
You're doing a great job.
But yeah, boundaries. People
Yeah.
do not like them when you put them up. And
Which is evidence of the need for that boundary.
Exactly.
totally. And if they can't accommodate or make, be flexible with your new thing, it's like, does this person belong in my life?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's when I start loving people from across the street. Hi, girl. Hey. Yeah. No, we're not doing this.
Yeah, this is so I've been really going back to what I was talking about like bringing God into my relationship or into relationships in general, and I've been doing like a lot of reading about this. And one of the first things I came across was that like you have to strengthen your own relationship with the power that's greater than yourself.
Absolutely.
Like that's where it begins, right? And then that's when you can bring those things into your relationship. I think similarly with the idea of boundary setting, you have to be able to establish boundaries for yourself. So for example, I think recovery is a really good example of that, right? With recovery, we are essentially saying this is a thing that I'm not going to do, right?
Yeah.
And I think someone's ability to be like, I don't know if there's a parallel here, but I think someone's ability to kind of show up for their program, for example, when it comes to 12-step, is a really good example of how they might show up in relationships.
Oh, I think all of that's connected. It's kind of like I used to have a job as a service learning volunteer coordinator. I would talk to folks, how you show up when you're not getting paid is how you show up. That you may think that, oh, no, I would be better if I'm getting, no, trust me. How you show up when you don't place that, I place the same value on the work that I do, regardless of if it's paid or not and how much I'm getting paid, because it's a reflection of who I believe I am. Yeah.
Yeah, that's... This is a lot. I'm taking it all in and at once it makes me think about like just how not fragile the human spirit is, but like how sensitive the human spirit is. I think foundationally that every single person wants to connect. Every person wants to be seen and loved and heard. And there are all of these ways that we go about trying to have those needs met. And that's where the conflict starts.
Sensitive, but resilient. I don't like, cause
I should speak for myself. I think, I am sensitive, but I don't see that as like a negative. I think sensitivity like allows for empathy and it allows for connection. Right. What was I trying to get at? Before Louis interrupted me.
Wow. It's a good thing that I have no feelings and I don't care because I right now I would be in the fetal position.
No.
Okay, so what came up for me is like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like if people do not feel secure and safe at the very fundamental part, like people start acting strange.
Of course, yeah.
And they're acting out of fear.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, if you, I mean, what is it? People become like everyone's instinct is to survive. You know what I mean? And if you try to rob someone, either physically, like metaphorically or literally, try to rob someone of their ability to survive, they're going to fight. Financially, like they're going to fight. Like a person, I mean, we see the opposite. We might think that like when a person is like, say, maybe clinically depressed, that's actually kind of like the reverse happening. But even depression is a form of trying to survive. It's like, it's the body trying to get you to slow down, to like reevaluate what's happening, you know?
That's a lovely way of talking about depression, because it doesn't feel like it.
No, of course it doesn't feel like that. I mean, I you know, yesterday I've been dealing with like a lot of like anxiety, that stuff that's been coming up. And of course, in the immediate, those things are so painful. They're so painful. And one of the things that's really helpful for me is like, I literally, in the moment when I'm experiencing the pain, I'm like, I know this is going to pass. I know this is going to pass.
Yeah.
You know?
For me, when pain comes up, whatever, emotional, whatever, it's like, there's a point of information here that I am needing to evaluate, right? Like it's just the marker that says something here is not in alignment with your values, and that's why it's painful. What can you change?
Right.
Or what can you accept?
Right. And and I think that question is like, how do we self-soothe? We're kind of off money now.
Well, no, it's like, I think that it's all like, it's like the Matrix. I still see where it's connected. Because like what you were talking about at the base level of it.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you're right, because I think that sometimes we use money to self-soothe.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It can be used as a maladaptive coping mechanism, right?
Oh,
like when I'm not perfect. I will say that. And I have moments of financial insecurity myself.
What? No.
What? Yeah. And I called a fellow and I was like, yo, I'm like depressed and I feel a little bit of financial insecurity. And the wisdom that he shared with me was, yeah, but it'll work out, right? Doesn't it always?
Always does.
And I was like, and that was what I needed to like exhale in that moment.
Yeah.
So the talking to someone is very important.
Yeah. You know, I went to a meditation meeting a couple days ago, and I was sitting there, anyway, I went to this meeting and I was like judging people because I was like, I can't with anyone here. And, but I was listening to their shares, right? And every share was like, you know, our problems are tailor-made, you know, and everyone had their problem and everyone was talking about them to some extent with like the same intensity. And here I was sitting in my chair being so fucking judgmental. And I was thinking to myself, like, here we are in a room of recovery and the solution is the same across the board. We need to get out of our own way. Right. And I think answering that question, it's like, well, how do I get out of my own way? Like, that's the thing that gets so tricky. One of the things that my sponsor tells me is like, you can't go to the problem looking for the solution, right? I can't go to my brain trying to find the solution.
Yeah, a sick brain won't heal a sick brain.
No, it won't, right? And so it goes back to this idea of like meditation and getting into silence and like waiting for answers to come. And sometimes what happens is like pain forces us to slow down. Sickness forces us to slow down. It's not uncommon for people to change their lives when they like had a near-death experience, right? Manny, you were going to say something?
No, I was just thinking about, that we have 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
And I was thinking about that right before here. I had my own therapy session, right? Okay. And that's just for maintenance, right?
That's real.
And what was I going to say?
Maintenance.
Just maintenance.
It's okay. Yeah, we all get to where we're going.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're done.
I know, we are.
Brandon, we're done.